let's get started. Roman Empire is one of the most popularly known empires of the history of the world. But if you don't know much about it, worry not. For here we are presenting the interesting facts about the Roman Empire and making you familiar with it. I want you to go and to finish your day learning something new, and of course to learn interesting facts while relaxing, which is possible here with you and me. The ancient Roman civilization starting on the Italian peninsula during the 8th century, founded in 753 BC, but its first king, Romulus, it grew into a rich and powerful city during the next few hundred years. By AD 117, the Roman Empire included the whole of Italy, all of the lands around the Mediterranean, and much of Europe, including England, Wales, and parts of Scotland. The Roman legend says that Romulus had a twin brother named Remus. They were abandoned in the area which later became Rome when they were babies. A Jew found and raised them, but when they grew up, Romulus fought and killed Remus and became the first ruler of Rome. The Romans built a huge empire and conquered new lands thanks to their strong army. The Roman army could march up to 40 kilometers a day. That's not surprising since they had such a huge territory and no guard. Life expectancy in ancient Rome was just 20 to 30 years. This view was propounded by Keith Hopkins in 1966. Let's talk about Earth's population. Even if it's big, the Roman Empire just occupied 12% of the world's population. Military, the Roman Empire never controlled most of the world. Though we talk so big of the Roman Empire, it was not really big. It was just 28th biggest empire in the world. The Romans didn't spend all their time fighting. They were amazing architects and engineers too. They built roads and walls too. Their architecture led the Colosseum Museum, the Mansion Curie, or Curie, Lapis Magna, and etc. are all very popular. The war between Romans and Persians lasted for an unbelievable 721 years. You heard it right, 721 years. That's a lot. What would you do if you were in an empire with constant fighting and a word of over 7 centuries? That would be insane even nowadays, and back in the day as well. Saturnalia was an ancient Roman festival in honor of the deity Saturn, held on December 17th master and the slaves will switch places. The poet Catullus called it the best of days. Well, why wouldn't it be? For people that had to work without wanting it, so if you know what I mean. I don't say the word YouTube always is, but it starts with a sled. For you to get in mind. What about food, you might ask? Since I have this shirt on, it's big. It was a gift for someone I love. The Romans like to enjoy their food lying down on a couch while eating with their hands. They occasionally used a spoon. They would never, ever use a knife and a fork, which Romans like to pamper with taste buds with exotic food, such as stork, roast parrot, and even flamingo. Would you like some flamingo? Remember the phrase? We were like that. It was approximately 8 times more populated than the present day New York was. That was how densely populated the Roman Empire was back in the day. What? Isn't that amazing? The Romans were alleged by some to have had a toilet god in the form of Gravitas, who also was the god of flatulence and was invoked if a person had diarrhea or constipation. That's interesting. Tonics. Let's talk about clothes. How did they dress up, right? 2 pieces of wool and fabric sewn together at the sides and shoulders, with openings for arms and head, were the most common clothes in Rome. Some Romans also wore togas, a kind of woolen shawl, to show how wealthy they were. Urine was used to wash clothes in those days. Oh my god. If it didn't make you say the title of this point, you are lying. I think it is directly connected with the previous point. Or bad. Am I right? Am I right? Am I? Lutetia. Paris was a Roman city called Lutetia. Thank God he's just plain and simple words. I just read what it said, literally. Early Christians were called atheists by the Romans, for they did not follow the ritual of paying tribute to the pagan gods. Horse and eater, what is that? The emperor goes Caligula, made his horse as an eater. Oh, your horses, man. A soldier's pay consisting in part of sword came to be known as salarium argentum, from which we derive the word salary. A soldier's salary was God if he was not worth his salt, a phrase that came into being because the Greeks and Romans often bought as leaves with salt. Beauty secret. Here up, girls. Wanna know the secret of beautiful Roman dames? Well, listen up. It was the sweat of the gladiators which they used to enhance complexion. tradition and beauty. Now you know. Wondering where the US come from in a Roman article. Well, the fact is that Lady Liberty was inspired by the pagan goddess Libertas. The Roman Mole. Trajan's Market. The Roman Mole is a large complex of ruins in the city of Rome, Italy, located at the opposite end of the Colosseum. The arcades in Trajan's Market are now believed by many to be administrative offices for Emperor Trajan. The shops and apartments were built in a multi-level structure, and it is possible to visit several levels. Isn't that great? Side. Hold on. Buena Gulay or Buena Gulay. It was a Roman law, was a type of death penalty imposed on a subject who had been found guilty of parricide. The punishment consisted of being sewn up in a leather sack, sometimes with an assortment of live animals, and then being thrown into the water. Hallucinating fish. No, the fish doesn't hallucinate, but it can make you if you eat it. Salema borgi, known for its hallucination properties, was eaten in Rome as a recreational. That substance. In ancient Rome, Julius Caesar was pronounced as Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar. What is Zodiac? Maybe I even mentioned it wrongly. But there you go. It wasn't mentioned as Julius. Julius Caesar. Has some kind of exotic accent to it. That's right. The first Roman emperor who have married a man was Nero, who married 2 other males. The first was with one of Nero's own freedmen, Pythagoras, with whom Nero took the role of the bride. Later, as a groom, Nero married Sparus, a young boy, to replace the teenage female concubine he had killed and married him in a public ceremony. A friend even gave the bride away as required by the law. He was some kind of creative man, isn't it? Also a bit cruel, you can tell, but interesting story so far. The Romans once filled the Colosseum with water to perform an epic mock sea battle. They wanted a pool party, seems. And let's complement this interesting fact with some kind of history about the Roman Empire, shall we? Ancient Rome, the state served on the city of Rome. We're going to discuss the period from the founding of the city and the regal period by Britannica. Thank you so much. back in the day. In the course of centuries, Rome grew from a small town on the Tiber River in central Italy into a vast empire that ultimately embraced England, and the continental Europe. That's a lot of territory conquered by one single empire. All of continental Europe, west and south, most of Asia, west and northern Africa, and the islands of the Mediterranean. Unlike the Greeks, who excel in intellectual and artistic endeavors and divorce, the Romans achieved greatness in their military, political, and social institutions. Roman society during the Republic was governed by the strong military ethos. While this helps to maintain the continuous warfare, it does not account for Rome's success as an imperial power. Unlike Greek city-states, which excluded foreigners and subjected peoples from political participation, Rome, from its beginning, incorporated conquered peoples into its social and political system. Allies and subjects who adopted the Roman ways were eventually granted Roman citizenship. Who would have thought? Allies during the Principate, the Senate, and even the imperial throne were occupied by persons from the Mediterranean realm outside Italy. The lasting effects of Roman rule in Europe can be seen in the geographic distribution of the Romans' languages: Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Latin, all which evolved from Latin, the language of the Romans. The Western alphabet of the 26 letters and the calendar of the 12 months. That's where the birth date is at. And 365.95 days are only two simple examples of the cultural legacy which Rome was actually a great civilization. So thanks to the Romans for the calendar. Thanks to the Roman for the alphabet. And what's up with the 25 days? We'll see. The larger historical period spanning from the output of ancient Greek author Homer in the 8th century to the decline of the Roman Empire in the 5th century is known as Classic Antiquity, encompassing Greco-Roman culture, playing a major role in the Mediterranean sphere of influence and in the creation of Western civilization, and shaping areas as diverse as law, architecture, art, language, poetry, rhetoric, politics, and philosophy. We're going to talk about Rome from its origins to 264 BC. But what's up with the early Rome? Let's talk about it. When Italy emerged into the light of history about 700 BC, it was already inhabited by various people of different cultures and languages. Most natives of the country lived in villages or small towns, supported themselves by agriculture agriculture or animal husbandry. In Italy means golf land. We're going to call it golf land instead of husbandry. I mean, that's a tougher word. And it's spoken Italic dialect belonging to the Indo-European family of languages. Oscan and Umbrian were closely related to Italic dialects spoken by the inhabitants of the Apennines. The other two Italic dialects, Latin and Mennonic, were likewise closely related to each other, and were spoken respectively by the Latins of Latium, a plain of west central Italy, and the people of northeastern Italy, near modern Venice. Their language resembled the speech of the Illyrians on the other side of the Adriatic, or Adriatic, during the 5th century BC. The Po Valley of northern Italy was occupied by Gallic tribes or Gaelic tribes who spoke Celtic and who had migrated across the Alps from continental Europe. That's interesting. They were the first highly civilized people of Italy and were the only inhabitants who did not speak an Indo-European language. Good job, good job. By 700 BC, several Greek colonies were established along the southern coast. Both Greeks and Phoenicians were actively engaged in trade with the Italian natives. Modern historical analysis is making rapid progress in showing how Rome's early development occurred in a multicultural environment and was particularly influenced by the higher civilizations of the Etruscans to the north and the Greeks to the south. Roman religion was adapted to the beliefs or practices of the Etruscans. The Romans borrowed and adopted the alphabet from the Etruscans, who in turn had borrowed and adopted it from the Greek colonies of Italy. Is it Etruscans, Etruscans? Who would have thought? Who would know? Let me know. Senior officials of the Roman Republic derived their insignia from the Etruscans. A curl chair, barber artered, toga, bundle of roads, gladiatorial combats, and the military triumphs were other customs adopted from the Etruscans. Rome lay 12-mile island inland from the sea of the Tiber or Tiber River, the border between Latium and Etruria or Etruria, because the site commanded a convenient river crossing and laid on a land route from the Apennines it formed the middle point of three distinct peoples, Latins, Etruscans, and Sabines. All to say, these three were formed to make me try and say a lot of places, but those were the three formal Latins, Etruscans, and Sabines or Sabines. Though Latin speech and culture, the Roman population was Roman society in historical times. That's true. Or sounds logical. The evidence for the analytic tradition shows that the Roman history is created during the 2nd century BC, were relatively prisms of facts and stories. Yet in the course of the 1st century BC, Roman writers were increasingly influenced by Greek rhetorical training, with the result that their histories became greatly expanded in length. Included in them were fictitious speeches and lengthy narrative of spurious battles and political confrontations, which however reflect the military and political conditions and controversies of the late Republic rather than accurately portraying the events of early Rome. Rome's foundation. This is going to show us how this was formed. And let's start with the early centuries as well. And the struggle of the others as the Roman state grew in size and power during the early republics. New offices and institutions were created, and old ones were adopted to cope with the changing military, political, social, and economic needs of the state and its population. According to the analytic tradition, all these changes and innovations resulted from a political struggle between two social orders. That is thought to have begun during the first years of the Republic and lasted for more than 200 years. What's up with the word back then? We have a war of over 700 years and another war of 200 years. I don't know what happened back in the day, but we're trying to know. Yeah, let's continue. In the beginning, the patricians were supposed to have enjoyed a monopoly of power. That was the first social order, the patricians. The Senate and the religious offices were also included in that monopoly of power. I would have thought as the plebeians, that was the second one. Began with nothing except the right to vote in the assemblies. That's something that has been repeated over and over again over history, don't you think? During the course of the struggle, the plebeians, however, were believed to have one conscience gradually from the patricians, or patricians. I would call them patricians. It reminds me of Patrick's Store, their political agitation and confrontation, and they eventually attained legal equality with them. I would have thought again. Thus, ancient historians such as Levi, how you pronounce it, Livy, explain all aspects of early Rome's internal political development in terms of a single sustained social movement. Early ages of social movements right here. And do you see the pattern? People claiming the right to participate in political spheres while others were granted that access because of their position of power or generational wealth. distinction between patricians and plebeians, or plebeians, plebeios in Spanish, was as old as Rome itself, and had been instituted by Romulus. The actual historical dating and explanation of this distinction still constitutes the single biggest unsolved problem of early Roman history. The tear in my stomach, I don't know what happened with that. The distinction existed during the Middle and Late Republic, but modern scholars do not agree on when or how it arose. Who would have thought? They are increasingly inclined to think that it originated both slowly during the early Republic, but the time of the Middle and Late Republic, it was largely middleless. At the point, only about 1,000 Roman families were patrician, all others being plebeians. Both patricians, Patrick Stars, both patrician and plebeian families made up the nobility, which consisted simply of all descendants of consuls. Oh my god, my stomach is not giving out. Which consisted simply of all descendants of consuls. The term patrician, therefore, was not synonymous with noble, and should not be confused with it. The patricians were only a part of the Patrick Stars. The patricians were only a part of the Roman nobility of the Middle and Later Republic. Okay. Alright. The only difference between patricians and plebeians in later times was that each group was either entitled to or just putting on the side from holding certain minor offices. Generational wealth, but also generational public positions and roles. That's interesting. So this has been going on and on throughout the years. I love Fernandez. Have you catch the pattern? If not, keep listening to this. The discrepancies, inconsistencies, and logical fallacies of the early republic make it evident that the analytic traditions thesis of a struggle of the orders is a gross oversimplification of a highly complex series of events that had no single cause. Tensions certainly existed. No state can experience 200 years of history. Oh my god, my belly is suffering the 200 years of history without some degree of social conflict and economic unrest. Even my light turned off. That's right. In fact, legal sources indicate that the law of that in early Rome was extremely harsh and must have sometimes created much hardship. Yet it is impossible to believe that all aspects of early Rome's internal political development resulted from one cause. What about early documents, if available, would have taught the later analytics historians little more than that a certain office had been created or some law passed. An explanation of casualty could have been supplied only by folklore or by the imagination of the historian himself, neither of which can be relied upon. Like these descriptions of early Republican political crisis evidence the political rhetoric and tactics of the late Republic, and therefore cannot be credence without justification. For example, early Republican agrarian legislation is narrated in late Republican layman's terms. Why would you think, right? Why? Early Republicans' conflicts between plebeian tribunes and the Senate are likewise barter. After the politics of the optimates and populares of the late populares, I want to call up to be called like that. We are the populares. Question the form must be a resounding and examining early Rome's internal development. Many of the major innovations recorded in the ancient tradition can be accepted. That's right. But the ancient interpretation of the fact cannot go unchallenged. Yes, sis. I want to keep knowing about this too. What's going on with them? According to the analytic or analytic tradition, I want to call it Anna. According to Anna, the first planet council was elected for 366 BC. All consuls before that time were thought to have been patrician. What's up with patrician? And one major aspect of the struggle of the orders was supposed to have been the plebeians' persistent agitation to make the office open to them. That's right. A big rose up for the rights to write that. However, if the classification of patrician and plebeian names known for the middle of the late Republic is applied to the consular list of the years 509 to 445 BC, plebeian names are well represented, about 38%. It is likely that there never was a provision against plebeians holding the consulship. We're talking about Patricia and how they were like fighting with plebeians. What are you talking about? The distinction between patrician and plebeian families may have become fit only by the middle of the 4th century. And the law of that time, which specified that one of the consuls was to be may have done nothing more than to guarantee legally that both groups of the nobility will have an equal share. So was everything a lie between patricia and plebeian? I want to think that was the resolution, that they both could have equal share. When I think about that, that was around the time of 367 BC. I want to think about that because then the fight between patricia and plebeian didn't make sense. I mean, it would have been like a waste of time or a lack of consultation and good research. So I want to think what happened to patricia and plebeian was right. The dictatorship. Let's talk about that. How to conquer the empire. Despite the advantages of consular collegiality, in military emergencies, unity of command was sometimes necessary. What are you talking about? Rome's solution to the problem was the appointment of a dictator in place of the consul. According to ancient tradition, the office of dictator was created in 501 BC. Oh my god. And it was used periodically during the Second Punic War. The dictator held supreme military command for no longer than 6 months. So it was not like some kind of legislation. Interesting. He was also termed the master of the army, and he appointed of subordinate cavalry commander, or cavalry. I would like to say cavalry. The master of horse. The office was thoroughly constitutional and should not be confused with the late Republican dictatorships of Sulla and Caesar, which were simply legislation of autocratic power obtained through military usurpation. Okay, I mean, I want to know about the Second Punic War. I think I'm pretty intrigued about that right now. I would like to decides separately what they do. It's giving history. The Senate of ancient Rome. New chapter. The Senate may have existed under the monarchy and served as an advisory council for the king. Its name suggests that it was originally composed in elderly men. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Whose age and knowledge of traditions might have been highly valued in the society. During the Republic, the Senate was composed of members from the leading families. Its size during the early Republic was unknown. Oh my god. Mainstream sources indicate that it numbered about 300 during the Middle Republic. Its members were collected later. Patres et conscripte, the forwarders and the roll. That's what it meant. Suggesting that the Senate was initially composed of two different groups. This just changed my page. How dare this happen? Since the name patricians was derived from patres and seems to have originally meant a member of the patres, the dichotomy isn't supposed to be dichotomy, whatever. Probably somehow evolved the distinction between patricians and plebeians. Patricians back. During the Republic, the Senate advised both magistrates and the Roman people, or said magistrados in Spanish, although in theory the people were sovereign and the Senate only offered advice. In actual practice, the Senate had enormous power because of the collective prestige of its members that were like, oh, remember that? It was by far the most important deliberative body in the Roman state, summoned into session by a magistrate magistrado who submitted marks of it for discussion and debate. Whatever the majority voted in favor of was termed the Senate's advice. Do you want me to say it in another language? Here it is. Senatus consultum. These advisory decrees were directed to a magistrate of the Roman people. In most instances, they were either implemented by a magistrado or submitted by him to the people for internal law. Internal to be at the end of law, you know. Democracy. The popular assemblies during the Republic, the different assemblies elected magistrados, exercise legislative power, and made other important decisions. Only adult male Roman citizens with authority could attend assemblies in Rome and exercise the right to vote. Who would have thought? The assemblies were organized according to the principle of the group vote. Although each person cast one vote, it didn't so within a larger voting unit. The majority vote of the unit became its vote, and of a majority of unit votes was needed to decide an issue. That also sounded like a poem, don't you think? The Centuriate Assembly, as stated, was military in nature and composed of voting groups called centuriates. Because of its military character, it always met outside the sacred boundary of the city, in the field of Mars. It voted on war and peace and elected all magistrados who exercised imperium. Before the creation of criminal courts during the late Republic, it decided to high court and exercise capital jurisdiction. Although it could legislate, this function was usually performed by the tribal assembly. And what is imperium? Imperiums are a bunch of consuls, censors, feudal people, you know. So the Centuriate Assembly history in the early republic, but information is only about its one organization. Oh my god, I missed. It may have begun as the citizen army meeting on their arms to elect its commander and to decide on war and peace. During historical times, the assembly had a complex organization, awarding citizens were placed into 1 or 5 economic classes according to wealth. Each class was had like a variety of number of centuries, and the entire assembly consisted of 193 units. The first and richest class of citizens was distributed among 80 centuries, and the second, third, and fourth classes as well were each assigned 20 units. I think this will be like pretty. This would have been cancelled nowadays, don't you think? The fifth class, compromising or just consistent on the poorest people in the army, were allowed 30 centuries. In addition, there were 18 centuries of knights, men wealthy enough to borrow a horse, and 5 other centuries, one of which comprised warriors which compelled the proletari or landless people too poor to serve in the army. I mean, I mean, if you wanted me to buy before, do I require money to do so? I mean, I was going to fight in your war, it wasn't even mine. I don't get it. Because the knights and the first class controlled 98 units. That wasn't fair. They were the dominant group, of course, in the assembly, though they constituted the smallest portion of the citizen body. Okay, I'll accept that. The assembly was deliberately designed to give the greater authority to the wealthier element, and was responsible for maintaining the political supremacy. I mean, what's up? Before of the established nobility, of course. The tribal assembly was a non-military civilian assembly. It accordingly met within the city inside the pomerium and elected magistrados with the exercise imperium. It did most of the legislating and set us a court for serious public offenses involving monetary fines. I think that was like the first one, I think it was a tribal assembly was more democratic in its organization. I see that, taking into account Patricia and plebeians, this was like the most democratic one for sure. I have to give them that. The territory of the Roman state was divided into geographic districts called tribes, and people voted in these units according to residence. The city was divided into 4 urban tribes, or tribes, tribes, and people voted in that. The city was divided into 4 urban tribes. During the 5th century before Christ, the surrounding countryside formed 17 rustic tribes with the expansion of Roman territory in central Italy. 14 rustic tribes were added, thus gradually increasing the assembly to 35 units, a number Guess what? We're going to talk about the plebeians. The plebeians tribunate, according to Anna is analytic tradition. One of the most important events in the struggle of the orders was the creation of the plebeian tribunate. After being worn down by military service, bad economic conditions, and rigors of Rome step law, oh my god, the plebeians in 494 BC, they didn't have anything in favor. saying it, the patricians, only when they saw that they were actually in the mud and in trouble, serious troubles, that is when they allowed them to have something. That's not fair, Patricia. That's not fair. The tribunes of the plebs, they also call it like that, like, why, Patricia? I mean, why? You didn't have to, you already had everything. Initially, there were only 2 tribunes of the plebs, but their number increased to 5 in 471 BC and to 10 in 470 and 57 BC. They had no insignia of office. Like the consuls, of course they did not, but they were regarded as sacrosanct. Whoever physically harmed them could be with impunity. They had the right to intercede on the citizens' behalf against the action of a consul, but their powers were valid only within 1 mile. 1 mile from the Pomerium. 1 mile, Patricia, like what? 1 mile. Patricia, they got nothing. They got nothing, They got nothing, Patricia, you didn't know. Oh my god, they convoked the tribal assembly and submitted bills to it for legislation. They were already poor, Patricia, Tribunes prosecuted other magistrados before the assembly, people for misconduct in office. They could also veto the action of another tribune. Veto meaning I forbid. 2 plebeian served as their assistants of managing the affairs of the city. Affairs of the city sounds like the name of a series, don't you think? Although they were thought as of the champions of the people, persons elected to this office came from aristocratic family. Patricia. Aristocratic families generally favor the status quo, of course. What else did they have? What did you think they would have been doing? This just changed my page again. I don't know what's going on here. That just keeps switching the part of the page I'm at. I'm back. Nevertheless, the office could be and sometimes was used by Jonas Burring aristocrats to make a name for themselves by taking up populist causes in opposition to the nobility. That's called propaganda. That's called using not your own propaganda in your favor back in the day. I mean, well, at least they pretended anyway. Modern scholars disagree about the authenticity of the Anna account concerning the plebs versus the first succession and the creation of the plebeian tribunate. Why do you doubt about that? I don't know. I don't get it. The tradition presented this as the first of the 3 successions. The other 2 allegedly occurred in 449 and 287 BC. The second succession. Is it that succession or succession? It has S-E at the beginning. I don't get it. But anyways, it's clearly fictitious. What? Were they all lying to us? Many scholars regard the first one as a later Anna invention as well, accepting only the last one as historical. Although the first succession, I just got to say succession now, is explained in terms of presuming the condition of the later agrarian crisis. Was that another thing to read? Great Anna, given the harshness of early Roman death, loves, and food, because they were always in war, amigo, who leads a 700 war. Of course they were in debt. I mean, George is recorded by the source of the 498 and 488 BC. Social and economic unrest could have contributed to the creation of the office. However, the urban civilian character of the plebeian tribunate complements the extra-urban military nature of the consulship so nicely that the 2 offices may have originally been designed to function cooperatively to satisfy the needs of the state rather than to be antagonistic to one another. I mean, what could have been? What could have been us expecting back in the day? We are reading this history, and of course, a lot of parents are repeating itself, but do you want me to keep reading? Do you want me to continue the series? Do you want me to just go ahead and contemplate what happened to Anna? What happened to the plebeians? What happened to the world? You will know in the next video streams of this series, so please just continue with your life. What you were doing before watching that. I wish you the best for Anna, for Patricia, for the plebeians. And I know some scholarship needs to clarify this, so people, researchers, what was true, what was false. I'm a bit disappointed by Patricia, but I'm hopeful in regards of the plebeians. So please, I want this to be